Tax you 10%, 20%, 30%, when it's going up. So,
this young guy, young boy.
Well, I always get people thinking, and I get them to kind of get beyond the stereotype things and get to the issues and talk real issues with people. How do you like your tax record? Do you like the tax you pay? And again, we're not zero tax charges. We're not crazy anarchists. We understand there should be tax, but we just want to see that the government gives you services commensurate with the amount of money.
And since he's come, it's like every single Sunday it's children. They're overflowing down the steps and sitting in the.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Well,
it's like an answer to prayer. Well, I tell them every Sunday, I count the children.
Well, there's a few different
how many children?
Camps in that in terms of there's some people who are wealthy and they pay a lot of tax and they feel it and they know and they don't like it, so that's like people who are kind of drawn to us. And then there's people who are educated and pay tax to have a local ballot. We're just kind of sort of starting out, so we started small because we're going through our local cities to follow the process. It's a kind of convoluted process, but once you do it a couple times, it all kind of works. Something on the ballot to repeal.
Will, yeah.
I'm sure you guys have it too.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hey, one lady in the back, stop talking. That's my mother. If anybody, yeah. Don't say anything bad later. My mom will be here. So my name is Mike Hoskinson. I currently serve as a planning commissioner in the city of Huntington Beach. I was sentenced to that by Councilman Eric Peterson. But we're here today to talk about political correctness. And it's a part of our everyday lives, every moment of every day. And I learned a number of years ago what the history of it was. And I want to share with people because it changed my life and it changed the way that every time I come in contact with it, it changes every way. So we'll get started. It's the death of America, in my humble opinion. I'm going to show you a series of images to set the stage. Yep. Is this natural human evolution?
No.
Yay!
No.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
It's absolutely insane.
That's an abomination.
It doesn't look that bad.
Which of these two is a product of a healthy society?
Airbrushing, man.
Which of these two is a product of a healthy society? Black Lives Matter will stop white supremacy? Or a young man from a poor home that had a strong mother that worked himself into as the top pediatric surgeon in the country, which is the product of a healthy society. Why are we told to be tolerant of only one of the two?
Oh, amen.
Which one? That'd be that one. On our college campuses, are our kids being educated? Or are they being indoctrinated?
Indoctrinated.
And out of the two of these, and it's probably the most conflicting because we love our kids and we want our kids to be in a happy, healthy household. But if you ever have anything bad to say about this one, you're a hater. They label it. People who are made to feel guilty about what they are. And is that privilege or is it racism? From the other side, not from them. And what about these folks that do this to themselves? Where does that come from? Can freedom of speech and tolerance coexist in the same space? Maybe we'll find out. Are these societal changes organic, or were they the product of intentional man-made forces? Who says organic? Anybody? Organic? 100%. Good. I got good through. I wanted at least one to go, no, what just happened? We're the product of intentional man-made forces. I want to introduce you to the people who are responsible for political correctness. How many people have heard of the Frankfurt School? My mom, because I propagandized her. The gentleman in the back. Good. I'm really happy that none of you have heard of that. There's a very few.
Don't they make hot dogs?
Because Franco-American people have been taken over by communists.
Was that made in 1921?
1921.
Okay.
Right. This is the Frankfurt School, also known as the Institute for Social Research at Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany, in the early 20s. These happy, well-adjusted looking people have destroyed our world today. These people are singularly responsible for the cancer of political correctness. They started the Institute in the 20s. In the 30s, they were forced out of Germany by Hitler because they were all Jews. And they were the other competing socialists because we know that Hitler was the National Socialist Party, the Nazi Party. Forget the translation. They ran to America and were welcomed with open arms into Columbia University, which every time you see a politician today that is a bad politician, Obama, I mean, the list goes on, they did a stint in Columbia. I call it the Death Star. Yeah. They were welcomed into open arms into Columbia. They went out from there. They have infected every college in our country and many in the world. After the war, they moved back to Frankfurt, but their legacy lived on, and many of them that we're going to meet survived in the country, most notably Herbert Marcuse, who was the new 60s, the new left guru, who coined the phrase, make love, not war, and many others. These people infected this in the 60s is where the rot that they put the seeds down in really exploded. So I'm going to show you, I found a little short movie that will explain kind of the basic premise for about 7-8 minutes better than I ever could. So I'm going to play that now. You might have to just be a little quiet here.
Let us begin with a very terse description. Cultural Marxism is a broad term which refers to the advocacy and application of critical theory, and more generally to the cultural, political, and academic influence of certain elements within the contemporary left. The roots of cultural Marxism are to be found in what is commonly known as the Frankfurt School. The term arose informally to describe the thinkers affiliated or merely associated with the Frankfurt Institute for Social Research at the Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany, during the interwar period. Critical of both capitalism and Soviet socialism, they sought to address the perceived shortcomings of classical Marxism in the pursuit of societal change. Their work came to be referred to as critical theory. Defining or categorizing critical theory is exceptionally difficult, for it pertains to a broad, almost disparate set of ideas, individuals, and approaches. The underlying and enduring aspect of critical theory, common to all its offshoots, nonetheless, is the creation of interdisciplinary theories that might serve as instruments of social transformation. During the 1960s, the Frankfurt School critical theory gained traction with some segments of the left wing and leftist thought in both Europe and North America. Today, its influence is felt throughout Western academia, dominating the social sciences and humanities. Gender studies and whiteness studies being two such examples. One of the most influential critical theorists and an original member of the Frankfurt School was Herbert Marcuse. A cursory glance at any paragraph written by Marcuse will set alarm bells ringing for anyone even remotely familiar with the current culture of intolerance on college and university campuses. Consider the following passage from his 1965 essay, Repressive Tolerance. The small and powerless minorities which struggle against the false consciousness and its beneficiaries must be helped. Their continued existence is more important than the preservation of abused rights and liberties, which grant constitutional powers to those who oppress these minorities.
Sounds a bit like
Social
Bernie
justice,
Sanders.
feminism, neo-progressivism, and post-colonialism, to name but a few, are all movements inspired by or born out of critical theory, and thus all come under the umbrella of cultural Marxism. Be it gender, sexual orientation, family, race, culture, or religion, every aspect of a person's identity is to be questioned, every norm or standard in society challenged, and ideally altered in order to benefit supposedly oppressed groups. Classical Marxism saw class conflict as occurring between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, between the haves and the have-nots. Cultural Marxism views such a conflict as existing between the oppressed and the oppressors, between those with privilege and those without it. The working class has been replaced by minorities. Majority groups are typically defined as privileged and oppressive, with minority groups accordingly labelled underprivileged and oppressed. Heterosexuals are oppressive. Cisgender people are oppressive. Whites are oppressive, especially white men. Christians are oppressive. Those that do not fit into these groups are thus considered oppressed. It stands to reason, therefore, that if heterosexuals are oppressors, the solution is to encourage other forms of sexuality. If whites are oppressors, the solution is racial diversity. If cisgender people are oppressors, the solution is to encourage transgenderism. If Christians are oppressors, the solution is to propagate Islam. Theodor Adorno, another original member of the Frankfurt School, wrote a book entitled The Authoritarian Personality, in which he defined parenthood, pride in one's family, Christianity, adherence to traditional gender roles and attitudes towards sex, and the love of one's own country as pathological phenomena. This tendency to pathologize opinions and life patterns, which are not in accordance with his own political ends, is characteristic of cultural Marxism. Differing views are thus described as irrational fears or phobias. For example, a person who feels uncomfortable living as a minority in an area dominated by Muslim migrants may be decried as an Islamophobe, since wishing to live amongst those culturally and ethnically similar to oneself is considered sick and phobic. When Pakistani Muslims living in Britain, by contrast, show in-group preference, converting entire sections of a town or city into a mini Pakistan, there is no sickness, no phobia, only multiculturalism.
20 years ago, there were no Pakis here, no one was doing nothing. But now, the Pakis are in the stamp, man, close, you know what I mean? Now, think 20 years ahead, boy, fuck knows, man, this is going to be Pakistan. I think in Pakistan, we're all fucking shipping over.
A popular and propagandist manifestation of cultural Marxism is political correctness, in which media channels and social scientists make it a mandatory exercise to do the following. Question common language. Illegal immigrants, for example, are to be referred to as undocumented migrants, while ethnic discrimination is referred to as affirmative action. Their ambition to define and redefine words can be seen as a means of controlling the discourse and altering cultural norms. Racism and sexism have been redefined as a product of prejudice plus power, which leads to such ridiculous statements as, "There's no such thing as sexism against men," and
"I, an ethnic minority woman, cannot be racist or sexist towards white men."
Maintain an unwaveringly favourable view of groups which are marked as being oppressed. Islam is a religion of peace. Black Lives Matter is a peaceful, legitimate protest movement. Feminism is only about equality, and so forth. No deviation from the aforementioned narrative will be entertained, ever, nor will criticism. While communism, as Marx envisioned it, offered the resolution of class conflict in a utopian social system, all that cultural Marxism offers is a desolate form of eternal warfare between ever more narrowly defined groups of offended minorities. The only meaningful consequence that its wide application could possibly ever have is the marginalization of traditional European culture.
Mike? So, you probably noticed a lot of things in that video that we see on a day-to-day basis. So, they talked about what the Frankfurt School built, critical theory and political correctness, or cultural Marxism. I kind of think about them in some of the same terms. And we'll talk a little more about that as time goes on. This is Antonio Gramsci. He was a classical Marxist in the 20s in Italy. He was Mussolini's favorite author. He ran a newspaper. He did a lot of time in prison. When he was in prison, he wrote a thing called the Prison Notebooks, and where he refined his theory, which was the long march through the institutions. He took Mao's long march. His theory was, this is where the cultural rot came from, this gentleman. You start in a country, you go through government, education, media, and you take it over, slow by slow. And this was his idea. And this is where we are today. Every one of those institutions is controlled by leftists. Every one of them politically correct to a man and a woman. This is the gentleman that brought that theory. So he was one of the earlier, he's not a charter member of the Frankfurt School, but I think what they did is take his work and adopt it and integrate that into their own. And they put this in red up here. This is the key. Andrew Breitbart said politics is downstream from culture. They rotted our culture. And this is what they knew if they did it. And these people had a long-term plan. And if they could get these people in these positions of power, especially education, and you could start rotting the minds of kids with this garbage and telling them to censor thought in a place that is the freest place in the world. We're the biggest pot of gold in the world, and this is why they came here. But they combined the work of Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud, which should tell you pretty much all you need to know, that it was probably had a couple wires crossed that were sputtering all the time. That Sigmund Freud said that everything is about sex. And you combine Freud's or Marx's economic works with that, and we get the bastardization that we're dealing with today. So cultural Marxism is what we now know as political correctness, critical theory, used in conjunction with political correctness. There's a lot of different schools of thought about that, but what I want to do today is take their work and drill it down into a layman fashion for everybody to understand. William Lind has written for over the years about the Frankfurt School. Cultural Marxism is a branch of Western Marxism different from the Marxism-Leninism of the old Soviet Union. It's commonly known as multiculturalism, which is another branch of it, or less formally, political correctness. From its beginnings, the promoters of cultural Marxism have known they could be more effective if they concealed the Marxist nature of their work, hence the use of terms like multiculturalism. The goal is always Marxism. The goal is always socialism, whatever we want to call it. They're very, I heard, I think it was Ayn Rand that said, socialism is by vote and communism is by force. It's the exact same thing. Yeah. Michael Walsh is a writer. He just brought a new book that I recommend everybody get. It's called The Devil's Pleasure Palace. He is a conservative writer for PJ Media. He was also one of the culture critics and music critics at the New York Times. He's a brilliant man. 200-page book. He compares what happened with the Frankfurt School and their whole history with modern culture and how the two link. I can't tell you, it's the most brilliant work. But critical theory is a notion promulgated by the cultural Marxists of the Frankfurt School. It simply states there is nothing, no custom, institution, or moral precept that is beyond criticizing, and this is key, and destroying. Because these people were, to their core, they were nihilists. They believed in nothing. They wanted to destroy everything. The same people we're dealing with in government now, they don't really have an end game. They just know they have to, they fundamentally transform. That's the thing. We just got to transform this thing first. We'll get to whatever it is in the background. And the fact that it was so swiftly embraced by American Academy after World War II remains a national disgrace. So this is my layman version of this. So the way that I see this. cultural Marxism, which I believe we can call political correctness, which is a form of mind control. Okay? We talked about it just a little bit ago with the gentleman here saying, oh, you can't say that. And we've all kind of thought that, oh, what if I say X, Y, and Z? Oh, you can't say that. So it's a form of all these many years of them teaching this to the public to instill in every one of us a little gremlin that self-centers us or censors us at all times. It's that little devil sitting on our shoulder that is sitting there going, oh, don't say that, you might offend somebody. You know, and so that is the little engine inside of us that is, they have instilled this disease in us. If it doesn't work, this is what's lying in wait for you. Critical theory. Critical theory, how many people get involved in Facebook or online discussions? How many people do that? So, how many people have uttered an opinion out there and had somebody come and mock you immediately? That's critical theory. They have a high, I've read books written by college people, and they speak, they're unintelligible the way they speak. They have a very unintelligible way they describe critical theory. It is nothing more than criticizing anything you disagree with till it shuts up. Okay, so if political correctness didn't get you to self-center, critical theory is waiting for you down the hallway to batter you into submission. So every time I just was mentioning to my mom, I was having a discussion with folks that I get involved in because I'm a planning commissioner. We deal with sustainable development, which it's Agenda 21. Sorry, it is what it is. But I was having a discussion with some folks in Boise, Idaho, about them taking car lanes and putting bike lanes in, which is part of Agenda 21. And I explained patiently where the ideology comes from, what it will have, what effect it will have in their town, and why they should fight it. And there couldn't be 5 minutes that a bunch of little college kids rushed in there to just start the mocking. Oh, yeah, you're going to start a Fox News branch here, aren't you? Verbatim. I kid you not. One after another. And none of these kids know who the Frankfurt School is. And yet, because I would ask everybody, do you think our society that became in our society was a natural thing? This was taught to them. And it was passed down through the years. So it's the 1-2 punch. Political correctness. If you can't, then you're going to get a good mocking, and if you don't shut up, I don't know what the third one is. I'm not sure. I think it's the, take you in the cage like the ISIS guys do. Dennis Prager said the left has only been truly successful in one thing, demonizing the right. So you think about everything from the narrative of the left today. It is really nothing about anything in depth of what they want to do. It's about Bernie Sanders' constant stream of the 1%. These people are stealing from you. And this is the narrative. This is why I challenge anyone even in this group here, in this whole place, to have a clear definition of what conservatism is. Because nobody knows, because it's been crushed throughout history. So nobody knows what the right really is, or that we're the freedom people. They look at us. You're the Nazis. You're the oppressors, like we learned a little bit ago. You're oppressing people. You 1%ers are stealing everything from all the folks. But I think this is probably the most succinct description of what they did. All they did was demonize us, and we allowed it to happen. Because I heard somebody say, we just thought they were stupid, but they're evil. They are actually evil. So the Frankfurt School, this changed how I thought about them. When I first found out about them, I did a bunch of digging, and this I came up with. And this doesn't have an attribution, but it follows them around everywhere you talk about these guys, and it makes a lot of sense. It was actually an 11-point plan. I cut one of them out because it was the promotion of drinking. I thought, well, who doesn't do that? Let's make it 10-point. I don't want to cut that out. Yeah. But creation, racism, offenses. And think about Black Lives Matter, Bernie Sanders, all the narrative of everything is based on race, because everything they have done is slice and dice all of society into little micro pies. Everybody's got their own little, I'm a this and I'm a that, I'm a this. I never was comfortable with this. Well, I'm an African American, I'm a Korean American. I'm going, Interesting. Why do they have black entertainment television without white entertainment television? You know, all these things that narrative is sitting there. I didn't even know it until I started studying this. Continual change to create confusion. Does anybody feel like they're standing on firm ground in society today? No. Because these people are masters at this. They are always pulling the rugs out from under us at every moment. Barack Obama and his minions are masters at this. We have never seen the sheer amount of legislation being thrown at us, change being thrown at us, because we respond to one thing and all of a sudden they had him in a desk going, okay, hit him with number 2, hit him with number 3, hit him with number 4, because we were not ready for this. You know, this constant change. And we just go, what do I fight? You know? And we were new, you know, we're good fighters now, we're much better.
Well, Mike, this is a fundamental transformation, right?
It is, yeah, definite part of it. This is the one that's so terrible. The teaching of sex and homosexuality to children. Transgender bathrooms in our schools. Okay? Forcing children to deal with things they have no coping skills, are not capable of dealing with at an early age, to poison them from the get-go. Lenin said very clearly, give me the children for 4 years and the seed I plant will never be uprooted. They know this. The undermining of schools and teachers' authority. You know, I would say they're pretty well in control of schools, but I don't know if friends that are teachers, I don't think they feel like they're in very much control there. Common Core, how are they in control? They got their lesson plan, they're teaching kids the drivel that's being said, and if they don't like it, they can get fired. Huge immigration to destroy identity. I don't know if I have to say anything about that, but I will. So I used to help run the Santa Monica Tea Party. And we were having a meeting about immigration a couple years ago. And I decided I was going to test the old saw, which was, well, those Democrats just want illegals for the vote. And I remember I took 9 different data sets and ran them. And I came to the conclusion that if they legalize 5 million Mexicans or whoever, we will never see a conservative in high office again. And you imagine 2 people playing poker, and they're both equal. They have the same amount of money, they have the same amount of skill, and they're constantly beating each other to a draw. And that's the way it's been for both of our sides. Then somebody comes out of the doorway and hands one of them a mound of chips. He's going to win. If he plays conservatively, he will always win. And that's what they want to do here. Those votes will enable them to always win. Because now they will, through artificial means, have broken the parity between the two sides. That is why they want illegals. The emptying of churches, which is happening everywhere. And I was not, don't hurt my mom here. I was not raised religious. I was not raised Christian. My mom was Catholic. But I have come to understand that Christians are some of the best people I've ever known. And even though I might not be a person who goes to church every Sunday, I will put my faith in their hands because of the way they treat their lives, the way they live and they love, and they, so this is not by mistake. They knew to break churches is to break the country. Because all this separating of the groups also is to pull a weak animal away from the flock and to open it for the wolves. So people who don't have any spiritual faith or guidance or group identity or whatnot, that is a healthy group identity. So they've taken away healthy group identity and given it to unhealthy groups that are angry, bitter groups. So the emptying of the churches is a no-brainer for them. They knew they had to specifically destroy Christianity. So that goes back to that other slide. Which one are we supposed to be tolerant of? We're always going to be tolerant of Muslims. You have to be tolerant of Christians. You can do whatever you want with them. An unreliable legal system with a bias against victims of crime. I'm a member of a place called Front Sight in Nevada, shooting club. And the first time I went there, they tell a scenario because they're training everybody to be proficient with guns and to carry them, is the whole idea. And they tell a story about a gentleman who had the most right to shoot that anybody could ever see. He was an upstanding citizen of his town with a family and a job. He had a person that hated him, that threatened him in public and said he was going to kill him. He said, I am armed. If you come into my house, I'm going to kill you. The man came into his house. He shot him dead. The opportunistic public or the district attorney saw a white man, upper middle class white man, put him in jail. The man lost his family, lost his business, lost everything, because you are made to, you're not the victim, you're the perpetrator, you know, you're one of these folks, you're the oppressor, right? So they're going to find a way to make you guilty. That guy just, some poor guy that just, you know, he didn't know what, he was a mental, or he's somebody we needed to have empathy for. And again, there's critical theory right there. You know, how dare you look down on that guy with his mental problems? So, dependency on the state or state benefits. Who knows, who's heard of the terms Cloward and Piven? There's a response. Cloward and Piven were two Marxist professors at Columbia. Oh, shocking. In the 70s, these guys are like bad James Bond movies all over the world. We're going to rule the world, here's our scheme. So their scheme was, if you could overload the welfare rolls of a town or a state or a country, that you would drive the country into chaos, and thus you could then create an artificial, catastrophe, take the country over. So they did it in the 1970s in New York City, and they were nearly successful. I'm going to propose to you that what Barack Obama is doing is Cloward and Piven writ large. All this indiscriminate spending. When did, you remember a long time ago, 6 years ago, that they were giving money to, I think it was Brazil, so they could drill for oil off their own shores, and I thought, they're just throwing it away. I go, I see that now. And here's the funny flip side to that. I just read this, it's pretty cool. Donald Trump, and it's reading a little bio of Donald Trump, and it said, Donald Trump got his start with a loan in the mid-70s during a slump in New York real estate. Could Cloward and Piven have created Donald Trump? I don't know. Possible. Control and dumbing down of media. I loves me some Kardashians. But they're not the cultural touchstone that I want to, have it be, this is everything about me and what I see the vision of my country. So obviously they're controlled. There's no, we don't even have to discuss it. We're here because that's what it is. You know, they have, part of the challenge that we have as conservatives now is that the left has control of all the microphones, right? We want to get to kids, they're sitting in the way with the control of the schools. We want to get on TV, they're in control of the majority of everything. Even Fox, that I would say is reasonably conservative. There are times, we talked about this, they're maybe not the conservative outlet we want them to be a lot of the time. So then you've got government. Where are we ever going to go? Where do we go for redress to government right now? Even guys that are on our side are quite often fighting us, and they're the most painful to fight. So, yeah, the media is, we have to create other media. Thank God for the internet. We must make sure what they did with the Title I and Title II changes to the internet never are put into place, because they will have then state control of the internet, and I guarantee you our free speech will somehow be magically disappearing within it. And they'll do it by cost. It'll do it by going, well, it's a utility now, we have to regulate it, so you used 3 gigs over your limit, and that's going to be $500.
Net neutrality.
Right, exactly. So it's going to be, it won't do it through, we're going to shut your free speech off. You just have to pay for it. You want to chat, you're going to pay. And we're all going to say, I don't, because you took everything away from me, I don't have any money anyway, so off you go. So I see that clear as day. And the last one, though, this is the big one they knew, encouraging the breakdown of the family. So Daniel Patrick Moynihan, no conservative, wrote the Problems of the Negro Family, right, in the 60s. You remember that? You remember that? He wrote a seminal paper in the 60s, and it was charting what was happening with black families in America. And it predicted exactly what's happening today. But it's not just black families anymore. It's families in general. Kids being born out of wedlock. People just not being the quote-unquote nuclear families that we know, the healthy units. We've all had, there is no more nuclear family, really, but they encouraged the breakdown of the family because what they said was, what we consider a normal family is abnormal. So I think of the Frankfurt School and what they taught people, and I just call it the 180-degree rule. So what we as solid, we think we're solid conservatives with good morals, whatever, they think 180 degrees away from us. So whatever we think is a good way, they will think is a bad way, and the opposite is true. So I just train myself. Whatever comes out of those guys, the opposite is true.
Mike?
Yes.
Say something. Deborah Pauly gave me a subscription to the John Birch Society, and one of their last issues had a really great article called What is That? Bernie Sanders Socialism, and they do a real quick summary of the Frankfurt School.
Yes.
So if anybody wants a little reinforcement, it would be in that article.
I would actually encourage everyone to join the John Birch Society.
Their articles
and their online website is outstanding. The New American Magazine, a lot of the issues that have been brought to the forefront in the country were brought forward by John Birch, but under another organization.
They're the Tea Party before the Tea Party existed.
That's exactly right.
And
the original Tea Party.
The fascinating thing about the Birch Society was anybody know who brought them down? William F. Buckley. That he came out in public against the Birchers, the John Birch Society, and effectively propagandized them into obscurity.
They're not as obscure as you think.
No. Joe Panzarella is our local rep. Good guy.
Big Joe.
Actually,
Why did he do that?
Okay.
Why did Buckley do that?
I'll tell you something.
Control its power.
So the previous screening was kind of
interesting.
I remember a number of years ago when I was in grade school, the teacher made a statement to the class, and she didn't explain it, but this slide does explain it and break it down. Her statement was, and this was during the Cold War, her statement was, when the United States falls, it will fall from within.
Yes.
Right there.
Yeah. There have been versions of it all over. Stalin said something similar. Mussolini said so. They'll spoon feed them, this until they finally. Sure.
I'm a fan of Sarah Palin.
You do. Love her.
And I wanted you to maybe list the adjectives that have been used to describe her.
Well,
by the opposition.
Sure. Well, I'll take a step back, and I'm always curious about who the left goes out of their way to destroy. Who do we know? Who are they trying their hardest to destroy right now? And our guys on our side. Ted Cruz. Yeah. They are going unpolitely insane about Ted Cruz right now because he's the biggest threat to everyone. In my estimation, I think a lot of yours as well. Sarah Palin was a threat because she was, you see the same thing with Ben Carson earlier on. He's part of the protected class, right? He's part of the oppressed minority. You can't be a conservative. You're a woman. What the hell are you doing with those conservatives? So this was the narrative of Sarah Palin. She broke from the crowd, that she was supposed to be with. She had to be destroyed, and that's what they do. Critical theory. Again, criticize something you disagree with till it dies. So adjectives, stupid. I remember that was one over and over again in that one moment of, so I can't, I don't know, what do you read? What a nothing thing. And how would that have been forgotten for everybody on the left? All of a sudden became everything about her. So I think that was their big narrative was how stupid she was. I go, sure, I know a lot of dumb people that get to be governors.
I can see Russia from the front porch.
Which turned out to be true to a certain extent,
But she never said that.
Yeah, that's
but it's funny how you see how this works now. So in and of itself, they will grasp on anything to mock and destroy a person, to put that seed of doubt in other people's minds. So I will tell you that you probably can't hardly find conservatives that would support Sarah Palin nowadays because they've been so poisoned by everybody. Because that poison, once it gets to that level, infects everybody if we let it. See, that's going to be the end of narrative of this. There is a way to stop this. So, did I answer your questions effectively enough there, gentlemen? This is getting into the weeds a little bit, but I want to mention it because it will ultimately, you'll think about it and you'll see it more and more. There was a philosopher named Hegel in the 17th century, I believe. His work was huge for the Frankfurt School because it taught them thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Think of this phrase: never let a crisis go to waste. Right? We know that from The Godfather. Essentially, though, the creator exploited a problem that attributes blame to others. What could we not categorize under that phrase under Barack Obama right now? What isn't going on that they blame on somebody else, right? So false crisis, false narrative, false crisis, solution. So
financial meltdown.
Everything, right? Everything. Yeah, the Wall Street meltdown, everything that's gone on, there's somebody else to blame. Right, but they create the problem most of the time. Or they, like Roman Manuel said, never let it go to waste. They see this and say, then they're running the pattern here over and over again. Well, we'll fix it. That's what we do. We're going to come and fix it. And they co-opt it. Healthcare, right? Oh, healthcare is broken. Yeah, we got to get there and fix it. So we're going to do our thing. And now healthcare is kaput, for a large extent. This one will eat away at you. You'll start to see this pattern, and it's a good thing. I hope this whole talking is with you because this is, hey, how are you? Come on.
A complicit press feeds into that.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody heard the old phrase if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there, did it actually, make a sound or anything like that? I was thinking of it going, if there's a news story and nobody publishes it, did it ever happen?
Oh, yeah.
And think about it. Because you wonder what they hold back. Or we know they slant it, but what do they even not tell? Because then if it doesn't get out in the wider press, did it ever happen?
Like what happened in Cologne, Germany on New Year's Eve.
Right, exactly. And then thank goodness for YouTube. Thank goodness for the internet. Some of these things would never be seen.
What's going on in Sweden about women being attacked by migrants there.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't want to accuse San Bernardino as a terrorist. Okay.
We didn't see their pictures for 5 days.
Yeah.
Because she was wearing a full-on...
Yeah. Now you're going to see it over and over again because all this stuff. Sure. Yeah, that's right.
It even started way before that. They don't even say the word Islam. They won't say that they're Islamists. And if they'd started that a decade ago, Islamists were perpetrating some of the crimes that they were perpetrating locally. I'm talking right here in Orange County. We would have started to be able to connect the dots. That prevents an informed population from making, right decisions. That's what it's about. What I thought was interesting about that whole chart that you showed, I'd never seen that before, with the 10-point plan to destroy the West. How they're all interconnected and interrelated. They might be using, 1 and 4 and 7. They might be using 6 and 9 together. I mean, they're just, it's really very interesting. I've never seen that before, but
and it's
very eye-opening.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should take the alcohol out of there. I really don't, because I think it is, it's one of the ways that America was taken. The Indians kind of lost their country because of alcohol.
And drugs. And drugs.
Well, it's funny, I'll tell you.
And drugs.
And drugs, right? Well, yeah.
I took it out more of the way because of the way it was written. Because I read things and I really read them and I go, does it make sense to me? And the way it was written, I didn't want to paraphrase it, and it just didn't make sense to me. So I thought it kind of diluted.
You're telling me that the original Frankfurt School's plan to destroy the West was an 11-point plan.
Yes.
Then I'm just going to say this because I love you and I do love you. You should not
Stays in this room.
You should not be the gatekeeper of that. You should present the 11-point plan in its complete entirety and allow others to make that determination. I would like the 11 points.
Send it to you.
Thank you.
I can think of something to probably add into this too, like probably something they might have thought of. Living a life of mass consumerism, that'd probably be another one, right?
But he's presenting the plan that has been discovered, and that's what we need to see, so we know what they're doing to us.
No, he's made a good point you're talking about something because they didn't know definitively how this would work, right? So consumerism is probably an outcome of.
It's part of the debt. It's all worked into the whole debt situation, isn't it?
No, there's nothing about debt. But we'll look at the things that are going to create debt, right? Okay, welfare state up here. Oh, continual change is expensive. You don't get free continual change.
Well, the dependency on state or state benefits.
Everything here has a dollar value to it. and it's in the billions and trillions. So, but I think that's probably just an outgrowth of unhealthy humans. You know, if you're a healthy human, if you're raised by the family, you go to school and you're taught the right things, do you need consumerism? Consumerism is just something that people use because they're looking to fill a hole in the life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So you had a question back there. Sorry, you had.
Well, the comment was alcoholism is not the right term.
Yeah.
It's the abuse of the drugs in our society.
Sure.
I was shocked to find out that in New England, heroin in my generation was dominant, but now it is dominant in the New England states.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what the left is using to basically brainwash.
But
by the same token,
is that the war on drugs, the war on terror, these are all crises where the government comes to the rescue and takes away liberty to help save us.
Yeah.
And so we have to be careful of falling for that because we can't have.
I mean, look at the current flap right now: Apple versus the FBI. Right? We want you to crack that iPhone. Now, my question is, well, great, we'll crack the one. Why do you want us to crack all of them? Doesn't make sense, right? So you go, we don't want to let you do that. I kind of side with Apple. I said, guys, you could have taken us in the back room and we would have cracked that one for you. But why is this in public and why are you pushing us to do the whole big thing?
No, I was just going to say about crises. That's all Hillary does all day long.
Sure.
Is she makes victims out of everybody.
She's a creation of this as well. You know, these are the there's two. There's the children of Frankfurt and the children of Saul, and they're kind of interconnected. I'm going to talk about Saul Alinsky as well. But this thing, you'll see this pattern. Now, this is Hegel again, huge for the Frankfurt School. This is a core part of their curriculum, was Hegelianism, of this false crisis creation, false narrative, false crisis, false solution. Then take freedom away with that. We know that one in the top. That's Saul Alinsky. The ends justify the means. Political correctness is a simple strategy to silence us. When I see political correctness anywhere now, I taught myself in my brain, I see the phrase, shut up, conservative. Shut up. This is all this is. The Frankfurt School reasoned that if you could simply silence your enemies, you will have won. So every time any one of us self-censors, they win. I never censor myself anymore, do I, Deb? I am, in town in Huntington Beach. I just had I just did a thing at the Planning Commission where we have our big regional government here, and it's called SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments, covers 191 cities. They're forcing low-income housing on us. SCAG teaches Marxist thought. They teach a thing called environmental justice. It is straight out of Marx. This is a $500 billion shadow government that teaches this. I hate that. Every fiber of my being. I dug into their, because we're fighting them in Huntington Beach. I dug into their numbers. I overlaid them with existing databases, U.S. Census data, California Census data. I've disproven all of SCAG's numbers. And I brought them out last week at planning. And most everybody's pretty quiet, all the enemies there. But there's been a couple people, one guy in planning who's big time lefty. And he's like, well, I need to see that data. So I'll share it with you when I'm all done with overlaying more on top of it and proving it more. But, yeah, they want me. Then some guy videotaped and put it on the internet. It's got 1,500 hits now. So, superstar. But you see, it's good stuff. So, this is about shutting us up.
But this can happen within the conservative movement as well.
It is happening.
It is happening.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are wings of this, and pardon me if any of it's Chamber of Commerce here. It's Chamber of Commerce. Right now we're fighting chamber, builders groups, and low-income lobbyists who are all coming together, strange bedfellows, to shut us up via the legal system. So they will pull together, think that the guys are in our tent until such time as the checks are getting restricted. And then all of a sudden you're a bad guy and you're outside.
I didn't even see the connection. I was going to say as I work with Board of Equalization, I didn't even see the connection to low-income housing and some of the special interest lobbies that are pushing for it until I realized that they have exempted themselves from a lot of property taxes the rest of us pay.
Yes.
And then the same people like Phil Angelides, who's made tens of millions of dollars off low-income housing, that was tax exempt.
Yeah.
He then says you're not paying enough on your house. Your middle class house,
He's
you're not paying enough. He's got tens of $1 million properties that pay no taxes at all.
Exactly.
And they're after my little puny house and to pay more.
Yeah.
It's funny that we don't hear that in the media. It's the kind of thing. He runs for governor, and apparently that wasn't newsworthy. That he's made millions of dollars on properties that paid $0 and 0 cents in property taxes.
If there's a story and it never gets told, that it never happened. We just did.
But yeah.
I have some, in my city area, we have all Republicans. We've had almost all Republicans since incorporated. Temecula was the same way. It was very small towns that grew very rapidly. Okay? And I saw a plan that came out in 2000. It was called, I can't even remember the plan. I really wasn't up on it at the time. In fact, I really didn't know what was going on until a few years ago when somebody came to me. Our church, one of the churches, the Calvary Chapels down there, had some property, 100 acres they wanted to do something on. They said, okay, the city said, you can't do it. If you do something on the property, you have to give us 60% of the property without paying for it.
Yeah, sure.
And
also called extortion.
And otherwise, you can't build on the property.
Right.
And so there's a lawsuit going on with the faith and freedom or whatever. But these are lawyers that are dealing with lawyers, and it doesn't seem to be working. And it keeps going on and on. Now, one of the things too is a lady that I know. She owns 10 or 20 acres. And they wanted to do the same thing with her because it said they saw a butterfly that was,
endangered species, right?
But they waited around for days and days and really didn't have one. I think they brought one out and lifted it up. And then they said, okay, we have the same problem here too. You have to give us 60% of your property, and then you can have 40, but you have to pay taxes on all the property, plus you're indebted to the insurance-wise to the rest of the property. Now, I couldn't believe it until I have stood in front of the when you have comment sections and they're doing these affordable housing things. We only have one guy in our city right now, Harry Ramos, who stood up, and then he was.
Do you know Ernie White, by the way? Do you know Ernie White?
Oh, Ernie's a good friend.
Yeah, he's a chat.
Yeah. Harry was the mayor of the city, and they put together a whole bunch of allegations against him and threw him off as mayor. And it was a kangaroo court.
Yeah, I remember that.
I went up to this thing. I said, "How can you do this? A kangaroo court? How can you create? How can you investigate somebody, throw him off as mayor because of allegations which were later proven wrong?"
Right.
And the newspapers printed it, and then were threatened and then they don't print anything anymore because the cities call them on the phone and say, you better not do that anymore, or some of the advertising that you have is going to dry up. The auto stores, the other places, they're not going to get the advertising because we're embedded everywhere.
So when I told the tale at planning 2 weeks ago, our local Los Angeles Times correspondent, a young kid, I noticed the next day they put a little blurb about the meeting, and it was long on all the stuff that the state is requiring the city to do, and how there's just no hope because we have to do it because it's the law. And one little blurb that said, Commissioner Hoskinson disagreed with the regional government point. And I sent an email to him, and I said, I just questioned the validity of a $500 billion regional government that has a 40-year plan to remake Southern California. I go, pretty thin, don't you think? Then never heard back from him. So, if it doesn't get told, does it ever get out? Anyway, this is a little bit. Has anybody seen the movie Agenda? Have you seen the movie Agenda? Go find it. They have it for free, I think, online. It's called Agenda. It's a gentleman named Curtis Bowers. He tells the Frankfurt School tale and the progression of progressivism in our country. This is a thing he put together for the movie. And you see Karl Marx as the granddaddy of everything here. And then all the way it goes through, all the way up to the Democratic Party, which you see over here. Frankfurt School, Herbert Marcuse, political correctness, diversity, social justice, multiculturalism. So all this is just a wing of everything here. Homosexual movement, feminist movement, Better for Dan, all these groups all coming together in the modern Democratic Party.
McCarthy was right.
Yes, he was.
And Nixon was looking for that proof that that's the real story behind Watergate. That's what he was trying to prove. And they were 2 minutes away from picking the evidence out of the hotel and walking out with it when they were shot.
It's surprising. But the point, he was right, and he was just a bad messenger. He was an unlikable guy that people, that the left could then, because they were very active in the 50s, they were there.
If you go back and watch the hearings, that's the political correctness of that was taken over by the media, and who really was it?
Yeah,
if you go back and look at the original, it's the same thing the Democrat Party is doing now.
Watch the movie with what was the movie of George Clooney about that whole thing? Forget it, but there's a lot of that going on there, But you're right. So this has been going on for a long time, and we're just. But again, what is this? Why put all this effort into it? To turn this country into full control of these people. Saul incident. This filled in. Sorry, Saul. So this goes back to critical theory because I want to start drawing the how this progressed through. Saul was the grandfather of community organizing. His mentor was Frank Nitti, who was Capone's enforcer. Good bedfellows. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. There is no defense. It's irrational. It's infuriating. It also works as a key pressure point to force the enemy into concessions and say that has looked like a charm. I was on this same Facebook forum, and there's a gentleman. I don't know how this works out. I don't know how people can see you going all over the place. I'm in this Boise, Idaho website talking about these streets with people, and I notice in the bottom of this thread, here's this guy named John Earl. John Earl is a leftist, environmentalist, journalist in Huntington Beach who has gotten in my face a few times. He's on this thread, and he just puts the letters zzz, like I'm boring him. But that's critical theory, right? So here's how you do it to those people, because this is how they can't handle it. My reply to him was, John Earl, I'm going, if you're going to cyberstalk me halfway across the country, at least put something interesting in there. I said, because you're a journalist, right? Nothing. I own those people. I destroy them. I love it. They don't know what to do. They can't. This is the fun part of this, guys. These guys have plan A, and it's worked like a charm, and they're lazy. They don't know how to counter it when it comes back at them in a clean, intellectual, mocking form. They hate it. They cannot stand being mocked. And it's just because they think they're the smartest guys in the room. Because they've had control of everything. You can get kind of lazy when you've had your hands on all the levers and nobody else has it. They can't handle it. And they do it, and I don't care if they cry and moan and whatever. I don't have any feeling for that because I know what's behind it. And this is the thing I want to impart to folks, is this isn't that person just attacking me. He's had 70 years of training from these people that have pushed this agenda stealthily through our country and through the whole world. I can't let these people win. This is unheard. This is like once I heard it, I have to figure out.
You mean we can't let these people win?
Yes, we have to make that decision.
No, we can't do it.
Neighbor didn't report Senator Newt Shooter or being fair, all were racist. Anybody know who invented the term racist? Leon Trotsky, famous communist, invented it to create a new category of crime, essentially.
Now, capitalist.
Yeah, right. It is a Marxist word. Right, exactly.
It's free enterprise.
Free enterprise, yeah, exactly. No, hate free. It ain't free except for free stuff. But think about this. I have friends in Riverside. I have a guy that lived in the tract that these people did. And they saw this. They knew. They saw it going. And they just, well, we better not say anything. Why not? What if you were one of those folks that worked for the health department and you're now dead? Or that was one of your family? I mean, what exactly do we owe these people?
Did you see, I think they put on the news one time, they showed the pattern of what he did when he came back and shot. It was the one table he was sitting at, and all of them were Christians. And he didn't aim at anybody else. He killed all of those people.
He was arguing with the guy there too. They had some, the guy was a Christian, he was Jew and Christian. Yeah. But when people, we get a lot of this stuff in our society now, and it goes back to the immigration thing. When you're a country of immigrants, you wouldn't want to break that, would you? But use that again, there's your critical theory, critical correctness for us, and said, oh, of course we're Christian, we'll sure let a few people in. Well, number one, I kind of hit them with the economic answer, because we're, the biggest lie in the world right now is that we have 5% unemployment. It's probably closer between 15 and 20%. At the very least, by government numbers, it's 10%. If a country were smart, it wouldn't let people in when they didn't need people. It's a simple equation. Why are we opening the floodgates to anybody, much less people that are going to murder us, and sit there and plot for our demise every single day? Doesn't make any sense, unless we're those guys that want to upend the country. Because this is constant change and confusion, right? Back to number 2 or 3 on the list. You're going, now you've brought these people in, and they're in your neighborhood, and you're on edge all the time. You go, I'm looking at that guy, I don't trust that guy. Your life has changed because of this, and it doesn't have to happen. That's why he's moving. He may be a crackpot. I think he's got potential to be an excellent dictator. But he is winning because he says what's on his mind. And he's a little crazy because of it. I mean, and every day goes by, he says a little more crazy stuff. But I have a feeling this is why he is winning now. And what scares me a little bit is people on our side who are supporters of his are exhibiting the same tendencies that Obama supporters exhibited 8 years ago. Irrational thought with anger. And I had a friend of mine 8 years ago, when Obama came on the scene, I did my homework on him and said, this guy's going to be a disaster. Just technically and politically, because he was a lousy politician, voting present and just slipping through the system. So I kept nipping away at my buddy he's an environmentalist, he's a leftist. And at one point, he's the sweetest, nicest guy in the world. And at one point, he just bawled his piss out behind. Mike! We've got racism! Just like that. And I just said, oh my God. We've got to have what? We've got to end racism. Yeah. And just like that. Yeah. I didn't talk to him for a couple of years after that because I just thought, oh my God, what have we created? Like, I didn't know anything about this back then. But that was from this. This thing that they have poisoned our culture with, where a person is so irrational to think that hiring a man of color into that position would somehow magically cure all of racism, the most craziest thought on the planet. That's why he's doing this. Because people are sick of political correctness. But I just have a feeling he may be the wrong guy, but I think we're going to probably find out. So, I think about it this way too. I think the founders gave us a lot of gifts. The First Amendment is first for a reason. Everything falls without free speech. Everything falls. And this is why political correctness was invented, to stop free speech. Everything hinges on that. Because it can't exist in the same space together. And political correctness is winning right now. Because this is the prevalent thing. There's very few people out there looking at a guy like me. I make people super uncomfortable because I say whatever's on my mind. I look people in the eye and I say it to them. I have no fear anymore because I don't care. Because now I know it's at stake. Now I know who's behind this. It's evil people. Walk toward the fire. Don't worry about what they call you. All those things are said against you because they want to stop you in your tracks. But keep going. You're sending a message to people who are rooting for you, who are agree with you. And the message is that you can too. And I take that to heart. This is the book I mentioned, Devil's Pleasure Palace. This will give you a good background of Frankfurt School, and it's an excellent book. It's an absolutely excellent book. Not Walsh. Like I said, writes for TJB. And just kind of a funny thing to end it with.
Huh? What is okay? What is that? Don't
you come in earlier, we were talking about a group called Frankfurt School that have been people that created political practice. And they're a group of Germans, and they're all dead, but they're having their effect that work has had on our society.
Oh.
So it's like, don't let dead Germans control your life. I just couldn't think this is more important. I'm a little biased. There's a lot of things that are important, but I try to go where the root of everything. And if we are able to stop this, everything falls. Everything falls to them. Like I tell people, like when we're dealing with stuff in planning commission, every time I'm in planning commission, there is some stupid law about global warming in our way. Global warming is a hoax.
Yes.
It isn't happening. Okay? It is not. It is a total hoax. And it has poisoned the minds of good people in our society who think it's real, and we got to do something. We got to change the weather. Sure.
Might be real. It's 71 degrees out there right now.
Well, here's the argument. Here's the only. Let me give you a little bit of firepower for global warming, and it shuts them up pretty good. They always talk about how it's science, right?
Yeah.
We settled science, and we control science. Well, here's the problem with that. The 19 years straight of no temperature average change on the planet, based on government satellite data. And I've never seen a group squirm harder than I hit them with that. Oh, you can't look at that, you can't look at that. Go, wait a minute, you guys are saying government's good. And all their data's good until it's not, until it disagrees with the narrative. This is the biggest control mechanism in human history.
Yes.
Global warming. So
A couple other things we always hit them back, and they never have an answer to this, is we have had measurable warming on Mars, observed it in other planets, and the measurable warming is greater than the warming that we've observed on Earth. And I'm sure our little probes that we've sent there.
Yeah, it's the rover. That rover, man, creating emissions.
Right.
So, to the extent that there's warming on other planets that we've been able to observe.
Tom, don't get me started. Don't get me started. An amateur astronomer.
Yeah. The other thing, though, that always kills them, and I just mentioned this because a relative of mine had one of the U.S. official weather stations in her backyard, and so it's a great thing to point out. So this has been pointed out for 30 years, but for some reason, because they don't have a good answer to it, the answer is always, let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
So we all know that something like 78% of the surface of the Earth is water, and we all know that they haven't evenly dispersed, little monitoring stations out in the ocean. There's only actually dozens, it's not even thousands, it's just dozens of monitoring stations across the Pacific and in water as opposed to on land based. So whenever you point out to them, why is it even when we were observing global warming, it was mostly in those urban heat islands like the San Francisco Bay Area and Orange County, and that's what it's observable. But all those monitoring stations, the few we have out in the Pacific, how come we didn't observe this warming trend even when it was going on? And their answer to that is, let's talk about something else.
Because it doesn't agree with the narrative. No, because, listen, I mean, in California, we're the tip of the spear here on that. Schwarzenegger, that idiot, hate him too.
Yep.
AB 32, global warming cap and trade. Do you know cap and trade, the definition of cap and trade? I mean, it's essentially buying carbon credits. If you put a puff of smoke in here, you got to be taxed more, so you put CO2 in here.
Yeah, cap and tax.
But who was the person that refined cap and trade? There's another test item here. Anybody know? Kenneth Lay of Enron. He didn't create it, but he refined it into its modern form. Crook. Because he knew, those are energy traders. I love that. They go, I trade energy. It's the weirdest thing. It's a scam, pure and simple. But everything, AB 32 now. So I was at a meeting of SCAG, my favorite enemy, at the Southern California Gas place in Downey. They had a big meeting hall there. 200 electeds and just rent seeker people there talking about cap and trade. $4 billion a year being extracted from California industry that we're all paying for because it's trickle-down economics. The man who was the MC of these 200 people, first thing he said to them, I kid you not, this is verbatim, they used to go rob banks because that's where the money is. You're in this room today because this is where the money is now. That's what he said. It's not about global warming. It's about stealing our money. And every dollar they steal from us is one little bit of freedom they take away too. Nobody thinks about that. You know, it's like if I have $1 million, I'm free. If I got $100, I'm a slave. You know, the more money they take from us, the more we're slaves.
That's
And
why
this
they
is
take our properties.
exactly. Well, every little bit of it. It's all, you know. I'll talk about. You know, I have a sustainable development talk that deals with all that. Sure.
If we have less money, which it seems like I do, we can't get good candidates like
exactly.
Like Paul.
But somehow the guys on the other side manage to get funding from somewhere. I don't know where that would be.
Another problem with this is, I lived in California, I was born here in San Diego. I was just talking to this, it's really hard for the citizens in San Diego or Orange County to go and lobby ourselves. We can't protest anything in Sacramento because we have to take time off work, we gotta get a bus or fly up there, and then we gotta get a hotel room, and the costs are astronomical, and they know that. They know that we can't get to them.
SCAG has their meetings on like Wednesday mornings at about 11 a.m. You know, and for that reason, right? If they wanted, they really cared about the public, they televise them. It's not like they can't, like, I think I can go on Skype right now and talk to anybody on the planet. So why don't they have them two-way, you know, where people could interact there? It's like there's the old phrase, or the idea of Occam's razor. The idea that, you know, that if you exclude everything, you go through everything, the simplest answer is the best answer. They're stealing from us. You know, hello, you're doing it with this, you know, and that's the purpose. I mean, I hate to, you know, it's gone beyond conspiracy theoretics now. It's into connected to dots. Every dot connected is a hand in my pocket or stealing some of my freedom. Sure.
So I understand now that unless they're still lobbying for it, what have you heard if there's any other news about wanting to split California in two because of that very thing?
I heard it's like 7, wasn't it, Deb? Was it going to be like some, what do they call it? There was some crazy plan to split it.
You know, for me, when I see people talking like that and realizing that it has to be approved at the federal level, I think to myself, I'm not going to waste brain cells and time and trouble on it, and I'm going to focus on things I know I can have an impact on. Like what you're doing there. The best thing would be to shut down all of these pseudo levels of government, like SCAG, and there are many. ACCOC, League of Cities, all of them need to go.
They're lobbyist groups. I mean, but let's be honest about what they are, right? They're just lobbyist groups. You know, I'm going to their League of California Cities communist training in San Ramon. They'll spend the public time for a vacation. That's what a bad person I am.
But the effort should be to shut them down.
Well,
that should be the effort.
Well, they only exist because there are politicians that are trading favors to them and making their things happen. Like, you know, anybody that goes to a city council meeting nowadays understands that our business is not being done. Like, anybody heard the term stakeholder? Like, you think it's you? I mean, you know, that, you know, I always tell people, I go, they want you to think it's you. I go, you're on the list of priorities like the 10, you know. I mean, this friend of mine, Gary, who puts all these videos, everybody's seen Grindel61 on YouTube. He goes to all these meetings, puts them on videotape, and he's an activist. And he gets these guys, he took a picture of this one city council meeting, they read through the consent calendar, which is where all the lightweight stuff is supposed to be. And they read through all this millions of dollars of stuff, and then he turns around, and you just see the whole crowd get up late in all red suits and ties, and, you know, all the stakeholders, you know, leaving there. All the guys that are pinching all of our dollars. So, yeah. So, did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah.
Best with my
pretty much, yeah. Okay. And I thought because, you know, if it by chance was split in two, at least you'd have your own government. You wouldn't have to travel so far.
Then we'd have to get a passport to go to Northern California.
Visas,
Trust me, I wouldn't go if I didn't have to.
Might be easier to relocate our capital than split the state.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, the first thing they do is like, yeah, sorry, we got to cut that water off. You know.
Yeah.
Now you notice that they don't have the problem because they have their Hetchy Dam above San Francisco is full at all times.
At all times.
Somehow they don't. Y'all saw David Spady last night. Ever see David Spady at the talk? Works at the American Enterprise Institute.
Yeah.
He and I have talked a couple times before last night. I've known him for a little bit. And he did a little movie called No Farmer, No Water, No Food. That is a really great explanation of the Central Valley problem.
Yes.
And I called him up. I had heard a metric that said the way that water is allocated in the state of California. And the metric that I saw was 10% for humans and businesses, 40% for agriculture, and 50% to, quote, environmental uses.
Yes.
And I was curious about that term, so I called David up. And I said, David, is this correct? And he says, yeah, pretty much. It's actually kind of light on the environmental uses. It's more than 50%. And I said, so define environmental uses for me. He goes, delta smelt, salmon runs, all the garbage that we hear the fights are over, where they're flushing, right, and they're flushing the water out to sea. And I said, I just want to be clear when you tell me this. Are you telling me fully half of our water is flushed out to sea?
Yes.
And he said, yeah.
That's what I'm
And I tell people now, I said, we are not in a drought. We're in a water management crisis.
Yep, that's true.
We don't have a drought. And you talked a little dipstick environmentalist and oh, zero science PhD. So, yeah, kind of hard to get over that. But
I live in the rice growing region. I just got to point out something. I'm in Placer County, so the one guy from the state of Jefferson there. And I just want to say that the amazing thing in our area is they tell all these people, convince you got to put a brick in your toilet and get a low flow shower head and all this sort of thing. We've got an inland sea of rice fields out by me, and rice uses sometimes 5 times the water of wheat, much more than corn, and we're growing rice in the desert. I live in a desert. Where I live in Western Placer County has less annual rainfall on average than downtown LA. Yeah. So, and we're growing all this rice there. I'm not against it. This is privately owned rice fields. That's great. But the point is, don't tell us that we got to put a brick in the toilet or something. If you're going to flush down hundreds of acres feet of rice.
I'll put a brick in my toilet as soon as you pull one out of your head.
Tom, even further than that, they're telling us we need to start drinking water from our toilets.
On 55, Roseanne Barr swallowed up that marijuana. Yes. The dirty little secret is, we're practically legalizing marijuana. And you talk about rice fields using a lot of water?
Oh, no.
Have you read what marijuana uses? So the minute they start taking that out, then I'll
the waters and all the Doritos get depleted of marijuana. Yeah, it's crazy. We're being lied to at every level. I mean, I don't feel, after studying all this, you just connect the dots like every good human. This is what the Frankfurt School teaches you not to do. Never, ever connect the dots. Never think for yourself. If you do, the hammer's coming down.
See, this is why I think it's more of an interactive approach. When you're listening to what's happening with Bob and when you're listening to what's happening with Tom, when you're listening to what's happening in other areas, and you realize that's exactly what's happening in our area, then you can start connecting those dots. If not, you feel like it's just happening in your little area, it's your little city, they're all screwed up, it's in a vacuum. Same with counter jihad's a huge issue for me.
Sure.
If we had been connecting the dots like Act for America does much sooner, we would have seen what was really happening and what's really on our front. They're just now starting to touch on it. Like at lunch today, all of that, and I'm sorry, that was like smoke and mirrors, a lot of that conversation. But, it's happening in other countries. It's already here. With the connection of the dots, that's why these kinds of conversations when we're sharing are so valuable, because you can say, oh, wow, this is happening here. With both Terry and Ann and some of the women in Orange County, we have our sister patriots, Carol and Carrie. We've all networked ourselves and we've talked about different things that are happening in different cities that are all interconnected. We see the same thing happening in this city that's happening in that city that's happening in that city. Start putting these teams of people together. That's where you start having your power. They can overcome the lack of money because they've taken all of our money. Is the ground still matters. Politically, the ground still is going to matter. And the voters still get to make that decision. So I really enjoyed this presentation. I really did. But I think breaks along the way, because I think you'll probably be asked to give this again. I'm assuming
Yes.
there are people here that are going to want that.
I know, this would really wipe me out.
Then you would be able to allow for a lot more interaction, so the sharing occurs.
If I was asked to, I could fill a semester with this.
I'm sure.
When you start seeing this now, you'll see, to mention that Herbert Marcuse coined the phrase "make love, not war." And all of a sudden, that's a cultural touchstone that now has an explanation in the face to it. And I'm telling you, did anybody see the movie Zelig? Remember that Woody Allen movie? It's an obscure one, but it's about a character that just keeps popping up in history. He's this little creepy little character named Zelig, and he's just going through history. These are these guys. They're Zelig. They're everywhere in our lives. When I get into a fight with a leftist now, I go, I want to introduce you to these people because they've had more effect on your life than your parents have. Yeah, it's true. So I'm sorry, sir.
Great.
Well, I wanted to add something to this generic conversation that we're having. One of the things that's really important is that the media has been tricking us. For example, throughout history, red has been affiliated with
communism.
Blood. But now, red is conservative.
Yeah.
Okay?
But if you like communists, they'll like
Number
us.
two,
Sure.
through history, socialists have had, when I say
But that was
definition.
That was a media trick.
Yeah.
Okay? That was a media trick because years ago, all I wanted to say is that years ago, when they were doing, when people were running for office, some networks used blue, marked the Republican states, some used red. Okay? Then the media got together and the whole Republican became red. Okay?
Okay. Number two, socialism has been the definition of the left wing.
Sure.
Yes. That was unpopular, so now they use the word liberal.
Progressive.
Now, they found liberal is not popular, so what's the new word?
Progressive.
Progressivism.
And it's all communism.
Number two,
it's all socialism.
In the morning, communism
I'm
and
a happy
socialism,
guy.
it's all the same thing.
I'm definitely gay.
That's right.
That was the definition.
Yes.
Yeah.
And rainbow is a promise from God.
Okay.
They took that.
Let's say this is you made the point. They control language, and if you control language,
here is watch the definition that the left wing are using to define political policy.
Never adopt the language of the enemy.
If you call that, if they call you Islamophobic, call that.
I'm sorry, we do have a general session in 5 minutes.
Okay,
I just want to
we need the parliamentarian, right?
All of you as delegates, if you haven't signed in to credentials, you need to do that.
I gotta go too. I'm sorry.
Just a question. I kind of had a little disagreement with you a little bit about what you were saying about media and how it controls everything. But what about nowadays when everybody can create whatever media they want?
That's what I said.
So it's going to be easier for us.
This is the savior for us, right?
Yeah, the YouTube
is to be able to control our own media, and that's what we have to do.
So it's not as bad as it used to be. I mean, if we play it right, we can actually affect things better.
You're 100% right. Yes, sir.
One last thing before we leave. Have you talked about eminent domain?
Not in this context.
Okay, well, if they were to be politically correct about the term eminent domain, it's because eminent domain. I mean, they could easily your home property identity. But it's always written down as eminent. Eminent to me is definitely
So
royalty.
Colored by number. It's like right this. Get to that. Please forgive me. I'm playing a lot of cards and people are not the cards and there's a little type of patriots. We call the government.
I love it. It's great.
The whole information.
Wow.
That's my story. Be careful who you place something with, right? You know, I mean, a good job.
It's something because most conservative people are responsible and they're raising their kids and having a job and things. But the problem is we can't let that be an excuse. It's true and it's not fair that the libs have to buy their time and money and they can do this. But that's not an excuse because if we just lie down, we're going to get
That's why I'm here.
So thank you for being here and And have, call me anytime and I can go into more detail. Did you need to take these notes? Or okay. I'll probably see you in general session.
Yes. Unfortunately, we can't run it.
He's a writer, and he's a conservative.
Everybody else is
too.
Like my good friend Bob.
Brilliant.
Not only identify
podcasts every day, about 4 days a week. Jeez.
I was gonna, when you pay to sponsor this, I got, they
That's
had,
freebie too.
I got to me, but
Phenomenal.
exactly.
A friend of Breitbart's and all that. Should be. We've got so much now good media out there. It's kind of like, we can actually choose to listen to more and stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't get crushed by the media.
Bob, he made the point saying my name, first and last name, and you did too. See, and I thought that was great. So when my friends were doing that, and I cannot be in the room. I could have been at home changing for dinner or something, and I'm still in the room.
I get curious. I started digging, and man, when I dug into this thing, this is amazing here. I mean, I
thought there was a lot of good stuff in there.
It's just fascinating.
How do you handle
Look what happened.
Part
of what happened.
Deal with that because we're not a theoretical body of councilors, right? So we've got to
people lose their drive.
Facts. So that's why I did the skag thing. I pulled the Democrats. They came over each other and said they're crap.
Or
they
can't be successful.
We're an idiot, one or the other. But you're going to grab they're basing forcing all the low-income housing and $500 million transportation plan. They want to make Southern California
good families,
numbers.
good schools,
My point is,
hard work, did everything just right.
So, but the cities and the governments are so, it's a crony capital fountain of historic proportion. The cities are like, oh, we're making a ton of money. So it's falling to guys like me to go, I did the research and I'm calling bullshit. So,
it means a lot.
But it's tough.
So, feedback, and I thought about that. And then Harry was there walking around. I thought, Harry's going to have a chance to talk. So we let Harry, Harry was going to, he knows what he's going to do. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Harry knows what I'm going to do. He gave me a chance.
I want to see it, and then I did a little bit of
I'm Del Caro.
I'm on your Facebook too.
Oh, okay, you get on the online? Oh, okay, yeah, so we have different seasons. That's great.
Yes, he's very good. Well, the establishment really came out for him, and that's one of the stuff sometimes. You look at his ad, it says nothing. And they're trying to make sure that Tom is not the Tom could actually just fall. They don't want him, but he can fall.
Or maybe we could try to do it for
I don't know. It's almost like in one of these.
I have to let me think it was easy. It is
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I would really appreciate it. It's all about how much candidates do.
I mean, I've been letting people know.
There's Buena Park, La Habra, Placentia, Fullerton,
Well, we need to let people know that are here that are going to vote. They need to vote. I've been working on my own thing, making sure I have a word I need to our convention. I want the series.
It's tough being the people that want to buy top trade and do the right thing for folks, and they've been so poisoned by this.
Well, I think that saddleback thing is
telling them something that would be of because they've been so poisoned. And I sit there and tell kids I'm going back
for a long time, and they have had me to talk so many times. Several of them came to the forum and came up together.
I just, to know what I know about where it comes from, it kills you to hear it coming out of their mouths.
I've got the video. I'm going to do something with it. I just got it today from Frank Alexander. So does it look like Crows is going to take it?
I mean, she was like, I was so mad. Next question.
What's the
You've got two going.
I really need to address
well,
what are you doing? You need to be educated. I'm just going to the water system is there.
I think many people have been praying for a long time. And that may, yes, no, right.